I never in my wildest dreams could have fathomed that taking that little wrinkled picture of a naked woman I found in the dirt in grade 8 and stuffing it into my pocket with no one the wiser would lead to a decade of slavery to pornography and lust. Never in my wildest dreams. I got to tell you, this series that we're doing right now, this is my story on a couple of different levels, but in particular that one, because I can still remember clawing the carpet on the basement floor in my parents' house. This is where my room was, begging God to set me free, to deliver me from my slavery to this addiction. Just like I'm sure the Israelites called out, the Hebrews called out over and over again to this God that seemed so distant, like he wasn't going to answer, like he wasn't going to rescue. I was there. I got to tell you, I was there. And it seemed like 400 years to me, just like it was 400 years for them in slavery. I remember moments where I thought I had broken out, I had broken through, and I learned firsthand this phrase that we've been using, getting out is not the same thing as staying out. I was there. I know personally that the slave mentality that you start to take on as you wrestle with some kind of addiction that you can't change, that has to break if you're going to find your freedom. If you think you're a slave, you'll think like a slave and you'll live like a slave. Yep, I was there. That was my life. I can understand when the moment of breakthrough came and Israel finally, or the Hebrews finally walked out the front door of Egypt with Egypt going, go, just please leave. I remember the euphoria of that moment when I was finally free. And I remember, and I can relate to the powerful principle that maybe some of you can't relate to. Like, why, when they're out the front door, this nation of slaves out the front door of Egypt, why is the first thing that God gives them a new story to tell? I can relate. It's because that new story redefines who you are in your relation to your life and the cosmos and everything else. It shapes everything. I understand how the very next thing God did was get their worship straight, how the first 4 commandments are about worship, 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 as we turn our eyes to Jesus, because he's all we need, not the other gods we've been turning to, him and only him. I get it. And I understand that the culture that God was trying to create with those 10 commandments is vital as this community of slaves, and all they've known is slavery, learn to govern themselves, learn to reorder their lives. Boy, I know what it's like to know that unless your freedom is reinforced by a worship, God-centered culture and community, your freedom will not stick. I get it. Now, just in case you have not picked it up, or maybe you're just brand new here today, that we've been talking about 3 particular zones of geography that are symbolic for our journey out of slavery. So we've been talking about this journey that Israel took out of Egypt, through the desert, and then into the promised land. Now, on a kind of metaphorical perspective, Egypt represents the old life. It represents that thing we're in bondage to, that slavery. The desert is supposed to represent a transitional period where we're out, but we're not fully in, where we're trying to figure out what this new life means, and we get our footing, and then we step into the life that God has promised for us, which is the promised land. This is what we've been talking about. Now, I just want to pick up the story and get right into it today. I'm going to read a pretty lengthy section of scripture here from Numbers chapter 13 and 14 that talk about kind of what happened next, because we've been spending all this time in the desert, and I want to get us out of the desert. I want to get us into that promised land, because that's where the story really starts to pick up. But the thing is They've been mulling around in this desert, and the Israelites now, like 2 million strong, have walked up to the edge of the Jordan River, and they can see it. They can see the promised land. They can taste it. They can smell it. It's right there. It's what God has promised to them. God's plan was not just to get them out of Egypt, not just to play games with them in the desert. It was to get them into his promised land so that they could truly become the light to the world that they are called to be. And here they are on the edge. Chapter 13, verse 1, and so the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. So 12 spies cross over the Jordan secretly, and they start to inspect the land. When Moses sent them, I'm skipping a little bit, sent them to explore Canaan, he said, go up through the Negev and on to the hill country. See what the land is like, whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How's the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees on it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. Why? Because when you can taste it, it's amazing motivation, right? To actually do what you need to do. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So they went up and explored the land. And when they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. And 2 of them carried it on a pole between them. That is some cluster of grapes. And so along with some pomegranates and figs, and then they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. So they're going to report now on the exploration. And there they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land, and they gave Moses this account. Okay, we went to the land which you sent us, and it does actually flow with milk and honey. Seriously. Here's its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large, and we even saw descendants of Anak there. I'll get into that in a minute. And the Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Like, there are people there. This land that God's giving us is occupied, and they're organized, and they got walled cities. Then Caleb, who was one of the spies, silenced the people before Moses and said, no, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those who are living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. And we saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, giants, right? From the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. And that night, all the people of the community raised their voices and wept aloud because they had so hoped that they could cross over and inherit this land. And all the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt. We're in this desert. And why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader. We should go back to Egypt. And then Moses and Aaron, the leaders of the people, fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Wow. They're right there. They're within bowshot of the promise of God, and they're waffling. They're looking across the river, and they're anticipating the battles that they're going to have to fight. And they're not warriors. They're slaves. They've picked up a few weapons by then, but they're not an army. So they're looking across the river, and they're saying, we can't do this. And they shrink back from the edge, not knowing what to do. What would you have done? Like, they're toying with the idea of going back to Egypt, but do you think the Egyptians are just going to go, hey, welcome back? Let's order pizza and get you working on Monday. No. They can't go back, and they know it. These are just empty words. And so they choose the desert, which is supposed to be a transition between the old life and the new life. They choose the desert as a way of life. They choose, instead of fighting the battles in Egypt or in the promised land, they choose to go around in circles and to tread water over and over and over again. They choose it for a way of life. They spend 40 years going in circles in that little triangle over and over again. I wonder how many times they passed the same rocks, whether their tracks were still there over and over again. Have you ever felt like this? Come on. Feels like you're going over the same ground over and over and over again. It's like you're living in a desert. This is their reality, and this is why their story is so instructive for us. This entire generation, except Caleb and Joshua, even Moses, who had been leading them, this entire generation during that 40 years passed away in the desert until there was a new generation, 40 years later, that would walk up to the very same edge of fear and have to face it, just like their parents couldn't. I got to tell you that a lot of Christians do exactly what these Israelites did. I mean, we know sometimes that we're stuck and we need God's help. We need a deliverer, just like I was calling out to deliver from my lust addiction, right? And then God does something, He steps in, and you have a breakthrough, or you get somewhere in your life, you get over the hump, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. But what you don't realize is that you're not fully out until you're fully in, right? You're not fully out until you're fully in. And so you get out in the desert, and this is the transition period where you have to decide, are you going to continue to follow this God that has set you free, or are you going to try to live your own life? Are you going to shrink back from the battles that are required to fight, or are you going to go in circles for the rest of your life? And I've seen this happen so many times where someone will come to manifest. I know I've brought this up, and then they'll experience something of God. They're like, oh, that's amazing. But it's getting over the hump to them, and then they kind of go, you know what? I think I'm good now. I think, thanks so much, but I'm good now. And what happens is we choose to live on the fence. It's not like we get out of Egypt and we actually want to go all the way back. We just want to go close enough so that we can sample some of the stuff we enjoyed. It's not like we want to go all the way back into the addiction, into the problem we had, but we kind of want to straddle both worlds. And the desert sort of represents the fence. But I just want to ask you, why would you live on a fence? Have you ever tried sleeping on a fence? When you're living on a fence, you're walking this tightrope, right? Because if you're not careful, you will fall back into Egypt. Because you're walking that line, you're dancing with the temptation. But you also don't want to fall too far into the God thing and become a Jesus freak or something. And so you're walking this tightrope, trying not to be committed to anything and wondering why your life sucks. Because the desert is not meant to be a way of life in your spiritual life. You're not fully out until you're fully in. This is one of the things that they figured out the hard way. They also figured out the hard way that these battles they were afraid of fighting in the promised land were not the only battles that they had to fight in life. So they had forgotten so quickly that to be a slave in Egypt was to be fighting a different kind of battle every single day. Injustice and harsh work conditions and all these, the whips and the judgment and the death penalty when they misbehaved and never having their own stuff and fighting was a way of life. So let's go back to Egypt. Oh, because that was so fun. You're fighting all day long there. And even though they shrank back from this promised land, they were afraid of the battles they were going to have to fight, they ended up fighting battles continuously in the desert. And because they're going in circles, they had to fight them over and over again. There were actually other nations living in the desert that they kept bumping into and having these wars with all the time. And then they had to battle thirst and hunger and backbiting and a lack of purpose. Now what? Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that, oh yeah, this isn't so bad. I like that rock that we've walked past 14 times. It's fine. It's kind of familiar. I like getting into the treads. Can tell we've been here before. It's not so bad, not so bad, not so bad. Forgetting that we're supposed to be crossing over into this promised land. You know, here's a truth that's hard to get your head around. You don't get to choose whether your life is full of battle or not. You don't. Whether you go back to Egypt or stay in Egypt and never leave, or whether you choose the desert because you don't want to go all in, or whether you go all in, life is full of battles. It's true. Life is full of battles. This is the kind of battle that God wants us to fight. Here's the first one. This is 40 years later. Joshua and the people of God, and Caleb, this whole new generation, are standing on the verge of living in the promise together as a community, not just individuals, as a community. They can taste it again. They're sick of the desert. They're sicker of the desert than their parents ever were because their parents died there. You and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, and no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. So be strong. Be courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I'm about to give them. I swore to their ancestors to give them. You don't get to choose whether or not your life involves battles. Battles are part of life. The only real question is, what kind of battles do you want to spend your life fighting? Do you want to constantly battle the slave masters in Egypt where you're stuck? Those old habits? Do you really want to fight those battles all your life? Or God gets you out of that stuff and you get over the hump, but you don't want to go all the way in, so you play the fence and you fight battles with insecurity and a lack of purpose and going around in circle and a sense of mediocrity. Do you want to fight those battles your entire life? Or do you want to fight the battles of destiny that take you into the land that God wants for you? You don't get to choose whether you fight. You just get to choose where you fight, on which ground you're fighting. So I want to talk in the time I have left with the 3 most important battles you'll ever fight. But I'm going to flip this on its head. Because the first 3 battles, the most important battles you'll ever need to fight, are not battles you want to win. They're battles you want to lose. It's true. The 3 most important battles you will ever face are battles that it is vital that you lose, not win. Because if you win these 3 battles, you lose everything else. So here's the first battle, and you can already see it kind of fleshed out in Joshua's life. The first battle you need to lose is the battle for your sovereignty. Who's in charge of you? Are you in charge? Are you your own God? Or is it Him? You know, most of us spend far more energy in our lives fighting God than we do fighting anything else. It's true. Now, fighting God may not look like saying, God, I defy you. It may mean that God has got his eye on your finances and you're resisting him on that one. Or it could mean that he's trying to deal with your lust issue and you don't want to give it up. Or it could be something about your schedule. It could be about your priorities. It could be about an attitude in your heart. But I'm telling you, we spend so much time resisting God instead of letting him just be God, letting him win. One of my favorite stories, I'm not going to go there this morning, I'm just going to describe it, is a guy named Jacob in the Old Testament who wrestled with God, literally. God came in the form of an angel in a particular big crossroads in Jacob's life in the form of an angel, and he just picked a fight with Jacob. Started wrestling with him. Now just think about this. God is wrestling with Jacob. Like physically, like you boys, you're in wrestling this year. Like imagine wrestling, you realize you're wrestling God. You think, oh, I'm toast. No, you're not. Because God's not going to force himself on you. The story says that he and Jacob wrestled till daybreak. Why? Because God's not going to go and pin him. God can, but he won't. He's waiting for Jacob to yield. But Jacob has this independent streak. He wants his own sovereignty, and he will not let go. In Hosea, it actually says what happened is at daybreak, when the angel finally just says, you know what, I could have won this at any time. He just gets up and goes, touches Jacob's hip, boom, puts it out of joint, and gets up, and he's about to leave. He basically says, okay, Jacob, you win. You win. And Jacob's horrified. It says in Hosea that he begged him not to leave without blessing. He's weeping, begging for his favor, God's favor, because he realized, no. This is one battle I don't want to win. When God goes, you win, you're in trouble. You're in trouble because that means you are on your own. He's like, what have I done? What have I done? I'm sorry. I submit, right? And so this is this moment for each one of us. Probably there are people here, absolutely. There are people here this morning. There's something that God has been wrestling with you. And I want you to know there will come a moment where he'll go, fine, you win. And you do not want that moment. This is a battle you want to lose. Because when you abandon yourself to Jesus, when you abandon yourself to God and he wins, you win. If he loses, you lose. He could squash you, but he won't because he loves you. Now, the second battle. Oh, I didn't even put this up. Sorry, your sovereignty. Yay. Okay, anticlimactic. Second, oh, there's the second one. Okay. Yes. The second one is your independence. This sounds like the same thing. The battle for your independence, right? It's not. Your sovereignty is about who's in charge. Your independence means how connected you are to others. So the second battle you need to lose in your life is the battle for living like an island, living on your own, living as though you can handle it. Now, this is my Achilles heel. I don't like this one, and this is the battle I'm trying to lose. And I forget so often. You know, when our kids were really little, the stage, there was a stage when we had 300 children in playpens. You know that stage? Where if you've watched parents struggle, there's the playpens, and then there's the bottles, and then there's the toys, and then there's you basically empty your house. You might as well just move to your parents for the weekend because you just bring everything with you. And so Shauna's job was to get the little ankle biters into the house. And my job was to unpack the car or the truck or the minivan. So we, I said it, I did it. I feel so free. Of course, we don't have it now. It's gone. That's why I can say it. But, yeah. Woo! So anyways, she gets the kids inside, and sometimes it'd be minus 48 with the wind chill or something, and it's 16 feet that I've got to go between the van and the house, but I don't want to go 8 trips. So me going, I got this. right? I can handle this. I can do this. My dad's like, you need help? Nope, I got this. So there's that 1 playpen, 2 playpen, bottles, bags, whatever, hang stuff off the forehead, walk into the, I've seriously, I'm walking like this, you can feel your pinky going, it's going to break. You've been there, you're like, no, right? You're like, I can make it to the door, and you barely make it, and you're like, we could have helped you. I got this, And then you forget something in the car. You didn't get it all in one load, so you go back. Do you want help? I know what it's like. We think we can do it on our own. and when I'm going, it's, there's so many times, if you're in my life group, you know this. There's so many times that I remember to ask for prayer for a hard time I'm going through after I'm done. Like I forget in the moment, I'm like, oh yeah, I had a really hard week. Why didn't you tell us? We would have prayed for you, would have supported you. It doesn't even occur to me. So I understand this. This is hard. But here's the deal. You need to lose the battle for your independence. You cannot do it on your own. I mean, yeah, technically you can make it with your pinkies broken and looking like you should have asked for help. Yes, it's possible. I'm talking about thriving. I'm talking about living in the promised land. I'm talking about living in the fullness. You cannot do it yourself. You can't. You need to commit yourself. Lose the battle and commit yourself to a community, a tribe that is committed to getting all the way out of Egypt, pushed through the desert, and all the way into that promised land. That's what you need to commit to. Now, not every community that calls itself Christian is like that. Some of us are content. Don't join a community that loves the desert. Just doesn't want to go all the way in. Just kind of want to play the fence. Do not do it. That's worse than going it alone. Yeah. Preach. I'll preach. It's worse. Someone asked me the other day, do you have ADD? No, I'm just so focused. That's my problem. Okay. Third battle. Moving on. So I can prove to you that I'm not. Okay. Third battle you need to lose is to lose the battle for your own purpose. This one's hard. And this one you will not lose unless you've lost the first two. You need to let God win the battle for your sovereignty. You need to lose the battle of your independence. So you give yourself to a community committed to getting into the promised land, or else. And then you need to learn to let God define why you're here. I've said this before, but if you do not live for a mission bigger than yourself, the mission in your life will become yourself. It's inevitable. Now, some of us know this, and it looks really bad, and so we go, well, okay, so if I marry you, then technically you're part of me and we, so there, I'm not living for myself, it's for my family. But it can become so insulated. Like there's nothing else happening outside your little walls. And to learn to live for others. There's a passage I already read this morning at prayer time. I just think it's so powerful. It's again, as Joshua and those people are about to cross into the land, look at these instructions that God gives Joshua. It's really cool. Oh, actually, sorry. It's right up on the screen. I'll just do this. That's easy. Okay. So they're about to cross over, and these are the instructions. Look at this. Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you after he said, the Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. Your wives, your children, your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan, but all your fighting men ready for battle must cross over ahead of your fellow Israelites. You're to help them until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, until they too have taken possession of the land the Lord your God is giving them. And after that, you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan toward the sunrise. So the picture is that they're going to cross over the Jordan River and they're going to start fighting battles and dispossessing the nations that are already there. And so it's really tempting for the Ephraimites or whoever is first of one of those tribes to go, oh, cool, we've taken my land. Good luck, you guys. He's like, oh, no. You're still in the army. And you keep fighting until all 12 of the tribes have their inheritance and they're at rest. Well, that's going to take a long time. Yep. That's going to take like longer than a lifetime. Yep. And look at this. It even says, not only are you supposed to be part of the army, you go first. You lead the charge because you're already tasting freedom. Here's the deal. It's time to trade some me battles for we battles. You don't get to choose what kind of battles you want to, or you don't get to choose battle or not. You can only choose which battles you choose to fight or give your life to. So let me ask you this. Do you really want to spend your entire life fighting your own battles for your family and your finances and your health and your sanity? Wouldn't you rather throw yourself into a community, as messy as it is, that's committed to getting into the promised land and fight battles for others so that they can be free? What kind of legacy do you want to live? You're part of a story that's bigger than you. I'm part of a story that's bigger than me. From the dawn of time, God had this in mind. God had this plan after the fall and sin entered the world and darkness spread over the surface of the globe and through humanity and through culture. God's plan since the beginning was to turn the tide through people who lost the battle to his son Jesus, who surrendered their lives to Jesus, and speak light into darkness and bring love to where it's needed most. You know the neat thing about God's love? It wants to go where it isn't. It has to go where it isn't. It's obsessed with filling a void. It hates a vacuum. God's love wants to go where it isn't. And if you've experienced God's love, yes, he wants to fill all the different cracks and crannies in your life, but then he wants to flow out of you into someone else. And he wants to give you to the world because there are people that cannot fight their own battles. There are people that will remain in bondage and slavery and loneliness and despair and purposelessness unless we give ourselves to those battles. Are you hearing me? This is why we're here. This is why Manifest exists. That initial core group, we said, we're not going to live for ourselves. We're going to live for the people who aren't here yet. We're gonna do this Manifest thing however it looks so that everyone everywhere can discover true life in Christ. We're going to be a people that are not content just to get part way out of Egypt or to muck around in the desert. We want to go all the way in. And we know, we get it. You're not all the way out until you're all the way in. So here's the deal today. Which battle do you need to lose? Which battle have you been fighting to win? I guarantee it's causing you stress that you do not need to carry. Which battle, I'm smiling, which battle do you need to lose to go, oh, I can't believe I've been fighting that, Jesus, I'm so tired. You win. I'm giving myself to you. I'm giving myself to your community, your tribe, and I'm giving myself to your mission. Where are you stuck? Because I guarantee, again, wherever you're trying to win that battle, you are not in the promised land in that area in your life. You're in the desert and wondering why it's so dry. Guarantee it. So, I don't know what battles you're fighting. I don't know which ones you need to lose. I do know that when you lose these 3 battles, when you commit yourself, you abandon yourself to Jesus, abandon yourself to his people and his mission, that's when you start winning the real battles, the battles that matter, the battles for others, the ones that leave a legacy. I want you, and I sense the Holy Spirit saying this too. I want you to lose today. I want you to lose something big. I want you to walk out of here going, the weight of the world is off my shoulders. because I finally gave in that area of my life. And I'm not going back. I'm not going back. So which is it? Do you need to lose to Jesus? Is it time to stop fighting him? Do you need to lose the battle for your independence? Give yourself to community? Just enough already of the excuses, just do it? Do you need to lose the battle for your purpose? Start fighting we battles instead of just me battles. And the next song or two as we sing, make this your commitment, your expression. I'm going to pull a few chairs up after the service. I'm going to be sitting right here. If you need help processing anything, I'll be there. But here is the hardball truth. Many of you, I just took you to the edge of the Jordan. And I showed you what life could be like. And if you don't do something, anything to say yes to Jesus now, you will have turned around for one more lap in the desert. Please don't do that. Let's pray.